Hi everyone and welcome back. I'm Kara, astrokara.com. I want to talk to you today about this upcoming hybrid solar eclipse. It's pretty crazy. I'm sure that you've all been feeling it. I've been feeling it. I've been trying to get this video done for about a week now, and it's something, things keep coming up that are requiring my attention. So here I am. I'm finally hopefully going to get this made for you. I have been dealing with a lot of this stuff in my own life. I made a little video the other day and put it on TikTok about people that have heavy Aries Libra placements are really probably feeling since the original new moon in Aries at 0 or 1 degree, and then now this second one at 29 degrees Aries. It's just the energy is very intense, and I think a big part of it is because the nodal shift that's happening in July. We're leaving the polarity of Scorpio Taurus, moving into Aries Libra. And so this is like a preview of the types of energies that we're going to be looking at for the next year and a half. So solar eclipses are always times of change. They always bring opportunities for us to review and make decisions about changes that we want to make in our lives. So I wanted to talk about that first. This astronomically is called a hybrid eclipse, and it has to do with the way that it's seen, the way that it's viewed. I live in the United States, and it's not visible from here. I'm not actually sure where in the world it's going to be visible. I think over the Pacific Ocean. But the hybrid eclipse has to do with the way that the moon and the sun and the earth align and how it's viewed from our perspective here on Earth. What I think is interesting is that this is actually kind of shown in the chart, and I'll get to that. But I wanted to at least mention that because I think it's the fact that it's not a typical solar eclipse, if you want to say typical. Like I said, any eclipse is always a time of opportunities for change, and this is certainly one of them. So let's talk about the Aries-Libra axis first. Aries is the beginning of the zodiac. It's the brand new child, the brand new baby that has just arrived, and it's here I am, and it only lives by its instincts. And so our Aries, our Mars energy, our first house, is all about that. How do we instinctively move, and how do we just show up and say, this is me, here I am. We all have this, even though some of us carry more Aries energy or more Mars. We all have a Mars somewhere in our chart. We all have an Aries in our chart, and we all have a first house. How those layer and how the combinations are is what makes us a little different, each of us. But we all have that instinct to just show up and say, here I am. That is how we begin our trip in the world. Now, by the time we get to Libra, it's the first of the social signs. It's where we now are, we've learned about ourselves through the first 6 houses and 6 signs, and now we're moving into the social sphere where we begin to be mirrored. So here we are in Aries showing up, we're saying, here I am, and then Libra is anything that's external to us, the other. Oftentimes it's people, but it can also be situations, it could be jobs, it could be pets, it could be faith, it could be tradition, anything that's outside of ourself that we are being, that's reflecting things about us back to us. So like I said, oftentimes that is people, and especially in the social sphere. Humans we're meant to relate. We are community-based individuals, people. Humans are meant for community. We are meant to relate. So when we show up and say, here I am, then someone else in their Aries says, they're showing up, here I am. And the interaction between the two is, they're my Libra, I'm their Libra. We are the mirror to each other. So in the Aries Libra axis, that's what it's about. How do you show up as yourself, for yourself, in relation to anything and everything outside of yourself? And then how do you decide with your own Libra what to include and what to exclude? What to keep for yourself and what to say, that doesn't belong to me. I don't need that in my life right now. I don't want that in my life right now. You have that power. That is our only power, is the power of our own choices. So we have the choice to include or exclude. That is part of the Libra. That is part of the Libra archetype. So I want to take a look at the chart, and then we'll come back and talk a little bit more about some of this stuff. And then I'll try to wrap it up. Okay, so let's look at the chart for April 19th, 2023. It'll be 7:47 p.m. in Phoenix, where I am, when the new moon occurs exactly. That will be the moon and the sun together at 29 degrees Aries. And that is right here. And here you see that the sun and the moon are in Aries, and the node, this is the north node, is here in Taurus at 4 degrees. So this is where I said the hybrid eclipse is showing up, because the sun and the moon are in the different sign as the node. But that is what determines that it is an eclipse. Anytime we have a lunation, either a new moon or a full moon, that occurs conjunct the lunar nodes. So let's talk about the energy of this eclipse and what we can expect, because this is the beginning of eclipse season, and this will be a 6-month process. This is also a continuing of the last set of eclipses, which occurred in October of last year. So any of the energies that were going on for you during October last year could be coming back to your awareness now. So the sun and the moon in Aries, this Aries energy is asking us to look at how we show up for ourselves. I mentioned this already, and I've been talking about this for a while. This is important because not only are we feeling this energy now, we're going to actually be working through these themes for the next year and a half, once the nodes shift in July. We have currently been working on the transit of the nodes through Scorpio and Taurus. The South Node in Scorpio has been showing us where we need to confront our past, where we need to look at and face our fears of vulnerability and loss, abandonment, and betrayal, in order to move into the North Node of Taurus, which is how do we value ourselves, gaining that sense of self-worth and stepping into sovereignty. Now that we are moving into the Aries Libra axis, this is our relating axis. Aries says, here I am, I'm showing up. Libra says, let's work together, let's mirror each other, let's relate. So this energy that we're beginning to feel now is just a preview of what we're going to be working through, or what's going to be available for us to work through for the next year and a half. This lunation is square to Pluto, the newly moved Pluto, which is at 0 degrees Aquarius. That energy is a push to individuate. It has been the upcoming pressure to break down your conditioning, to break free from your past and how you relate now to yourself, and understanding what it is that makes you unique and embracing that. Saturn has just moved into Pisces at the beginning of the astrological new year, when we had our first Aries new moon. This is the time of awakening. And it's no surprise that we have everybody talking about being woke. Now, that's a whole separate situation, and I'm not going to get into that, but I do think it's interesting that that is the term that we're using. So the mass awakening that I'm talking about is the veil of illusion, this rose-colored glasses, maybe, perhaps, that we have had on and that we've been looking through at the world. We are going to be taking those off. We are going to be seeing things for the way they are, not necessarily for the way that we expect them to be, or the way we have wanted them to be, or the way we had been conditioned for them to be. We're going to be seeing things in a different way, and we're going to need to know how to respond to that. And the best way to be able to respond to the big changes or anything that comes at us that we're not prepared for is to know where we are centered and to know that we can take care of the things that we need to take care of to survive within ourselves. All of the resources we need are really within ourselves. The new moon is also conjunct Jupiter in Aries. I talked about this in my last video, that Jupiter in Aries wants to show up and show up big. It wants to remember that I am here and I need to be able to express this abundance within myself. That is part of what it is teaching us. And Pluto is coming along in this square and telling us it's time to make some decisions. It's time to make some choices about how we want to show up. So as we're looking at all of this Aries energy and why we want to cultivate our courage and our bravery to show up for ourselves as ourselves, we are looking at, and as I talk about this polarity, the Libra-Aries polarity, we also need to look at the planets that are associated with that, which Venus is associated with Libra, Mars is associated with Aries. Mars is now in Cancer, and Venus is now in Gemini. We also look at these two planets as the sacred masculine and the divine feminine. So Mars in Cancer is asking us to slow down and remember who we are at our core. How do we come home within ourselves? We can still use that big, brave courage to show up, but we have to understand that in order to do that, we need to feel safe. We need to have a sense of emotional security, and that can only be found when we are grounded within ourselves. Venus in Gemini is now asking us to look at things from a new perspective, to be curious about new ways of thinking. All of this leading up to this Mercury retrograde as well, that's getting ready to happen in a couple days from the eclipse. So Mercury is currently in Taurus and will retrograde there. It's conjunct Uranus and just passed over the North Node. Again, this is about how do you think about your own sense of value? What things do you tell yourself about yourself? We all have an inner critic. Now is the time to review how you listen, if you stop the thoughts, if you are able to reframe them. We also have outer critics, sometimes intentional, sometimes not. But the Libra aspect is asking us to discern what it is that we are going to include, what are we going to exclude, what belongs to me, what doesn't belong to me, what opinions am I going to allow to shape how I think about myself. Is it going to be someone else's opinions, or is it going to be my own? Now, of course, I think it's healthy to take other people's thoughts and feedback into consideration. But does that mean that we have to always manipulate ourselves, betray ourselves in order to fit someone else's image, in order to fit someone else's expectations? I think not. But it requires a lot of work to build that within ourselves. Pluto is also squaring the nodal axis, and it will be all year into next year. This is really a lot of information for another video, but I want to mention it here. In evolutionary astrology, when we're talking about any planet that squares the nodal axis, we look for the resolution node to determine how we're going to integrate that energy. So the South Node has been our resolution node. Currently, the South Node is in Scorpio. So this has been a consistent transformation of trauma, of looking at and confronting where we have experienced that abandonment and betrayal, so that we can move into self-acceptance. It really becomes a worth story. What story are we telling? What story are we telling ourselves? And what story are we telling others about who we are? It's time to end the toxic patterns of thinking based on conditioning, based on other people's opinions that keep us in an unworthy state. You are worthy. You have never not been worthy. You are not worthy of rejection. You deserve to take up space. Harness the brave Aries energy and step out courageously as yourself in the world. If you don't have a habit of journaling, now might be a good time to begin. To put down how you feel about all these thoughts that are coming to your mind and how you can possibly reframe them. I often talk to my clients about ing words. Instead of saying, I am worthy, because we have to make things believable to our subconscious. If we are running the pattern that I am not worthy, then when we say I am worthy, we don't really believe it at first. So when we're doing any kind of affirmations and self-talk, mirror exercises where you stand in the mirror and talk to yourself, use the ing words like, I am learning to value myself. I am beginning to see my own worth. Which one feels more empowering? Which one feels more believable? If you'd like some help working on rescripting and rewriting your narrative, we can begin by taking a look at your chart together. Welcome back. So ultimately, this is about our worth story. How do we decide that we are now going to live based on how we value ourselves and how we interact with others? How are we going to continue to change the way we think so that we can develop this sense of worth within ourselves? I want so much for you to be able to experience this. This was my journey of about 2 years of deep diving into really looking at my thought patterns and my behavior patterns and my wounding, and doing a lot of grieving and rewriting and rewiring those things in my mind that I didn't, so that I don't go right back to the trigger, that I can respond from a calm, centered space instead of reacting to the trigger, which just perpetuates the pain further. It's not easy. It is not an easy journey. I'm still on it. I'm still actively working through how do I show up in my relationships and how do my relationships impact me, and how am I working through creating and holding and maintaining boundaries and honoring myself and showing up with my own sense of value, knowing that I have value, and how do I meet my own needs and where do I project those needs into my relationships. It's an ongoing challenge. I'm working on a course and a workshop that is based on teaching you what your soul has set up for you, how your soul has been set up to learn your love lessons, essentially. What it is that you need, what you value, what you are looking for in relationships, where you might tend to project into relationships where other people should meet those needs of yours, and then where you find meaning and how you connect that ultimate meaning into relationships, and maybe that's where we become disillusioned. And so knowing that about yourself can help you to show up more authentically and unapologetically be yourself. Unapologetically show up, knowing who you are, knowing what you need, knowing what you can offer, and being able to ask others to meet those needs for you, and feeling safe to accept them. I do still have some space available for April for bookings. If you are interested in doing a reading with me, I do half an hour or 1 hour readings that we can dive into your chart, talk together about the transits and how these eclipses are affecting you specifically. You can go to astrokara.com and click the link to schedule. And I wish you the best. Take care of yourself.